Good morning and welcome back to the House of Gouldians. I know we've had a bit of an unexpected break. I do apologise for that. A couple of weeks ago when I was supposed to be filming for episode 10, I had a bad bout of flu and it's taken me a little bit of time to get over that. And then as I was getting over that, the final preparations for our really big show was taking place, and I just quite honestly haven't had the time. So yeah, that particular show we will be looking at some of the footage of today as part of the show. We had 223 Gouldians on the show bench, which is, I wouldn't say a record in South Africa, I can't say that definitively, but it certainly is a record during the time that I've been on the show bench. So yeah, obviously I haven't been involved since day one of showing Gouldians, so I can't say it's a record without sort of some doubt in my mind whether it is or it isn't, but I can certainly say that it's the biggest show in a very long time. So yeah, we'll look at that in detail. So I did end up winning that particular show, which I was very, very chuffed with. So the House of Gouldians, our hard work has been paying off. And it was our Majestic bloodline, funny enough, that won it. So definitely heading in the right direction. And I was particularly pleased with the results from that show. In terms of the sort of rest of the episode, obviously with us being sort of a little bit behind time-wise, I wanted to sort of catch up a little bit. So we're going to be looking at the Majestic and the Mutation side of it. We've got a lot to talk about in the Mutations. And then I wanted to also do our checklist for March, since when I'm now starting to film, it's the 1st of March, so it makes sense to do that quickly, as I'm hoping to get the episode out this Friday, so you would be seeing it on the 3rd of March, and we're wanting to sort of make sure that the checklist is done for March already, so that you're aware of that. Alright, so that's pretty much the episode for today. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get cracking. So for me, the breeding season is very much underway. We've got chicks in the boxes being fed. We've got eggs that are being incubated. So I'm very cautious, let's put it that way, not to disturb the birds too much. So while I do sort of fundamental cleanouts like trays and things like that when it's needed, I try and sort of keep that kind of disturbance to a minimum. And if I do sort of tray cleaning, for example, I'll do 1 or 2 trays at a time, and then I'll vacate the room for a good couple of hours to make sure that hens aren't off the eggs too long if I've disturbed them while cleaning. So just something to bear in mind. A lot of the time, if you sort of overdoing it, the problem is that then eggs get cold and you actually end up with dead in shell chicks because the eggs have got cold. So just something to keep in mind. In terms of the March checklist in general though, so we do weekly nest inspections. Anything more than that, you're likely to disturb the pair and they're likely to abandon. Like I said, I avoid disturbing the pairs with eggs, or on day 1 or 2, in terms of once the chicks have hatched in particular. I just find if you happen to check the day that they hatch, and you scare the sort of birds off the nest while the chicks are hatching, they tend to be more likely to throw chicks out of the box. Not necessarily always the case, but that's just my experience. And then the final thing sort of for March is just to make sure that all cages with chicks have daily access to protein and eggshells and all of that. And also very, very important that at no stage do they run out of food or water. The fastest way for Gouldians to abandon a nest of eggs or chicks is if they run out of food or water. So yeah, so that's pretty much the March checklist. Let's move on with the Majestic bloodline. So, as a sort of broad overview, our first pair of reddeds that we paired up, they have 3 chicks on the perch. I will show you those pics now. So There's a photograph of them. They've come out of the box a good size. They're already sort of standing at the same sort of height as the parents, which is awesome. It does mean that they're more than likely going to be slightly bigger than the parents, which is what I'm hoping for, because we're needing to concentrate on our size a little bit. I've had the privilege of seeing a couple of European birds lately that have come into the country, and you can definitely see that the Europe standard is slightly more robust, first of all, and also slightly bigger overall in terms of length. So yeah, we do need to work on that. That's something that is going to be my key focus for probably the next 2-3 years, because it's not a short-term project changing something like that. And the good news is that our Majestic side has sort of got to kind of where it needs to be from a type perspective. So in terms of the shape of the head, the back line, the sort of chest lines are improving. We've still got some work to do, and you will always have some work to do. But those aspects we can kind of sort of park in some ways, although we never want to neglect them, and I want to now start sort of building the size a little bit more. Right, so that's the red-headed pair. That little family is doing really well. I may only do one round of the birds this year, and the reason why I say that is I'm absolutely inundated at the moment with pairs. With me taking over a lot of birds from Gerard, I'm very grateful for it, don't get me wrong, but I end up full house. So yeah, I have been sort of selling off a couple of birds that I don't want. The problem is there's so many nice projects to work with. I really don't, there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to sell off, I want to work with. But it does mean that I'm limited on space. So yeah, I've always said I'm not about breeding quantity, I'm about quality. So if I've got 3 from a particular pair, I don't need more than that. Really don't. So yeah, that will probably be sort of the general trend this year, is that we'll do sort of first or one successful round, let's put it that way. If it's a very small round, like I've got one single chick on one of the black-headed pairs, then we will let them go second round, because you know the risk would be that if something happened to that one chick, then I don't have any others. Whereas if the likelihood of 3 chicks being lost in a season is highly unlikely. But anyway, so let's now look at the black-headed pair that did breed, so you can have a quick catch up there. So you can see the youngster that they bred out. Like I said, it's a single bird. Pretty sure I did mention in a previous episode, but this particular black-headed chick, or what I think is a black-headed chick, and that's where I'm going with this, is that I'd done an egg swap. I'd swapped one egg with this particular pair's nest because of issues that I'd had with the parents at the time. So it may well end up being a red-headed chick, because it was a red-headed pair that I was having an issue with at the time. But I don't know until it feathers up. So this pair is definitely being left to breed again, and they are on eggs again. And yeah, this time the eggs on their clutch, whereas last time most of them were infertile, this time they all look to be fertile. So I'm expecting a good round from them. Alright, so that's the sort of blackheads. In terms of other pairs in the bird room, we've this particular pair over here. It's another red-headed pair. They've seem to have hit it off really well. The hen's come into condition. She was one of the birds I had on show. So you know, even though her beak was dark, she hadn't been paired up yet. She was in a holding cage for the show. But now I've put her with the cockbird. They immediately hit it off. The hen was dancing, well, when I say dancing, she was shaking her beak and her tail for the cockbird. He responded the right way by doing his full courtship dance, and literally I put them in like 2 minutes ago, and they're already looking at the nest box and that. So they've really hit it off well, and I have no doubt that within a week, 2 weeks, we'll have eggs in the box. So that's the second red-headed pair. So I said to you that we would sort of have a quick catch up on the Majestic, but then I'd also talk about some of our mutation projects today. So let's move on to the commoners. So in terms of the commoner side of things, I thought we'd have a very quick look at 2 of the projects, the 2 sort of more exciting ones, if you like. and that is the Pied Project and then the Blues. So where are we with both? Pied Project, you'll recall, we've got the two pairs. We've got the yellow birds with that the hen bird has quite a bit of green across her shoulders, and that was a bird I bred now 2 years ago. She didn't breed successfully last year with her being her first year. She's on eggs, they look to be fertile and everything's going well. She was paired up with an orange-headed cockbird that also had the odd green feather in the back. I don't consider him to be a true pied because I don't know his history. So even though he's got green feathering and might well be actually a pied bird, it may just be a tick mark. But the point is I needed a cockbird, and I would rather go with one that is showing some kind of sort of pieding effect, if you like, even though it's not a true pied, I don't think. The hen, on the other hand, as I've told you, it's descended from a yellow nape, so that bird was a green bird with yellow feathers in the back of the neck. It was it's a progressive type of mutation, so those yellow feathers get more over time, which would indicate that it's a kind of progressive pied type scenario. I'm not saying it is, that's why we test breeding and proving it out. So that's the point, is that pair is breeding. They're on a good healthy clutch, I think it's 7 eggs if I remember correctly. I don't have the card in front of me right now, but they're incubating nicely and they seem to be doing a good job at this point. Obviously we don't know once the chicks hatch, are they going to feed them, all that kind of thing, but the fact that it's mature birds and not youngsters, I would imagine that there's no reason why they shouldn't, let's put it that way. Then the other part, we had a bit of tragedy in that we lost her on Saturday. She was fine leading up to the show. The week before, she was looking after the chicks, and then suddenly, the sort of Thursday before, she suddenly started getting puffed up and that kind of thing, and I knew there was a problem. I immediately gave vitamins and that kind of thing to try and sort of get her past it. But I can't tell you what went wrong there. It could have been an old age thing. She was a 2019 bird, so she's not very old, but she's sort of at the 4-year mark. To have such a big clutch, because she had originally laid 8 fertile eggs, 7 of which hatched, 1 was dead in shell, and of those 7 she was raising all of them, and they were already past the point that I'd rung them. So the stress of that alone and her age might have sort of put her in a sort of a weakened state, that she was more susceptible to something like coccidia or something like that. But whatever it was, it happened very quickly. But good news is the cock's looking after her. So out of that clutch of birds, one of them is definitely a dilute. One chick is visually a blue bird. However, that one's on the struggle bus. It's been sort of pushed out the box a couple of times by siblings, because the cockbird built the nest level with the sort of top part of the L, and as a result all the chicks sort of gather around the entrance way, and inevitably the sort of youngest and weakest, if you like, which is always normally the blue, and in this case definitely, gets pushed out. So he ended up sort of stagnating at the size that he would be when I rang them, whereas all the others have continued to develop in terms of size and feathers and all of that, and are looking fantastic. So yeah, so like I said, 1 dilute, 1 visual blue, which I've ended up having to foster to a different pair in the hopes that they will raise him, and then the rest are normal looking birds. Now, with that particular hen, we had already got some of her offspring as part of the donation from Carrot. So we have a dilute that's sort of in a holding cage until next breeding season. So we've already got that bloodline sort of saved, if you like, even though the mother's dead. And because I'm 99.9% sure that it's going to prove out to be a recessive gene, I'm not particularly worried, because I will pair out those birds to unrelated birds for next season. In 2 years' time, we will then be able to take some of those chicks and start sort of bringing them back together. Obviously, we don't want to do that too often, because they will be sort of cousins, if you like. And yeah, we don't want to inbreed, but just to prove out that it is in fact visuals. And then once we've got some visuals, to prove out that it is recessive, and then we've got some visuals that we can work with again and that kind of thing. And then we can slowly sort of build out the genetics in terms of diversifying the blood, and then sort of over time start bringing it back and producing healthy, strong mutation of parts. So that's kind of where we at with the part project. Now let's move on to the blues. So in terms of the bluebirds, we've had some success in the sense that our blue hen, I entered her as a virtual entry on the show. We'll get to that now and how she did. But they've gone ahead and laid us a touch of 6 eggs. It was a little bit suspicious in that they didn't seem to be starting to incubate them. So as a safety, I moved 2 eggs down to a box where the parents have started laying, but they haven't started incubating yet. So that at least we've sort of hedged our bets a little bit. In case they don't turn out to be good parents, but I don't see why they wouldn't. There's no reason. They are active in the box, so they are going in there. They just haven't actually taken the decision to start incubating yet. So that's the sort of the one blue pair. Our pastel pair over here, I don't know if you caught a glimpse of him feeding. They also on eggs. They've got 4 eggs in their box at this stage. And they seem to have started incubating them already, which is great. I know both are out at the moment while we're chatting, but they have been incubating. When I first came into the bedroom this morning, both were, well, one was on the nest. And then the other blue pair that we've got in the bedroom, unfortunately they don't seem to be too keen on each other. I'm not quite sure what to do there because I don't really have any other split to blue hens, and it's a nice blue cock who's not the best in terms of, he's a little bit flat-headed, so I would have preferred not to use a flat-headed bird, but the hen's a good quality hen, so I was hoping that the one will offset the other, and you might get 1 or 2 chicks that are usable in terms of our long-term quality and projects. But like I said, at this stage they don't seem to be paying too much attention to each other. They haven't shown any interest in the box. They're not even sort of paying attention to the soft food. So yeah, I've got to do a bit of thinking around there. The cock's not the youngest. If I'm not mistaken, he's a 4-year-old cock if I remember correctly. So that might be part of the problem. For a cock that's not too old, they can certainly breed at that age. I know guys that have bred 5-year-old cocks. It's just their fertility starts to get a bit less as they get older. But at 4 years, there's nothing wrong with trying to breed that bird. There's a very good chance that he would breed successfully. But like I said, for some reason the hen and him just don't seem to click. So hopefully they sort of grow on each other, and later on in the season, sort of maybe April type thing, they would have started breeding. If not, then I'll have to look at repairing them if they haven't bred by April. But at this stage, it's still very early in the season, so it's not the end of the world if they take a little bit longer. So that's kind of the catch up for today. We've spoken quite a bit about various things, shown you some of the pictures and the videos and things of the birds, and I hope you enjoyed that section. Now let's have a look at the show result. Right, so the idea behind the show was to celebrate 80 years of showing by one of its members, which is Mr. Fred Barnicott. So he started showing when he was 6 years old, and he's still showing on SAN CBA shows. He has kept so many different types of birds over his birding career, and has touched in some way on so many clubs, whether it be judging for them or mentoring people that are becoming judges, or just generally giving advice to bird keepers and aviculturalists in general. He's been acknowledged in many books as well, so he really has been an amazing contributor to ornithology in this country and all over the world. He was also the gent that happened to establish the white-breasted Gouldian, and his birds were then later sent out to Europe. To Italy was, I think, the first ones, and later there was other European countries that it was they were exported to, and that was many years ago. So all your white-breasted sort of Gouldians in Europe and that would have descended essentially from his birds. So yeah, it was important for us to really honor the man, and that was the purpose of the show. So you'll see this is a photo of us setting up the hall on the Friday. It was an absolutely stunning venue. It had loads and loads of natural light from the huge sort of side windows. And that really is important when you're having a bird competition or show, as the judges really need a lot of natural light to be able to get a good look at the bird and the colors and all the rest of it. So yeah, the venue was absolutely spectacular for a bird show. And in particular, the Gouldian section, you know, while we had budgies and parrots and essay birds and lovebirds and foreign birds of various species and types and all the rest of it, the sort of noteworthy section on the bench was the fact that the Gouldian section managed to reach 223 Gouldians on this particular show. Now, I've been in the show, on the Gouldian show bench, for a good number of years already, and it's certainly the largest show that I've ever attended with the Gouldians. So yeah, it was particularly pleasing to see rows and rows of Gouldians, and literally I think they took up about half the hall. I'm not going to go through all the show results, just because there is so many different sections across the show. But in terms of the Gouldian side of it, best Gouldian Finch on show was won by myself, as well as the reserve runner-up was won by myself. Second place was Fred Barnacle, and then the best opposite sex was Johan Pedersen. Breeders' Rung and the best open class were both won by myself, as well as the best normal on show. Best lilac was Johan Pedersen, whereas the best white-breasted bird was Johnny Kruger. Best blue series was myself, and the best yellow series was Jackie Greenwood. You then get your double factor yellows, which was won by Johnny Kruger. Your best single factor was Jackie Greenwood, and your best dilute was Jan Buerter and Philip, sorry. And then in terms of the sort of some of the other mutations, so the yellow rump edge went to Eric McPherson, as well as the best any other color. And then the best pastel on the blue series went to Eric, and the best silver went to Jan Buerter. Best match pair was Amanda Bradley, and then the best pied on show was myself. What is also interesting about the show is that it was a hybrid show, meaning that if you couldn't travel to the show, you were able to send video entries in. And they were judged alongside the physical entries. So the bird would be called up on the laptop screen, and while the judge was busy looking at the physical birds that were in the hall, he could then have a look at that as well. And that the pied entry as well as my blue hen were both entered in this way. And it just shows you that there was a good mix of virtual and physical winners on the day, which was nice to see. It was something new that we were trying. There's certainly room for improvement with this, but it was something different, and it was good to sort of try some sort of new ideas and things on this particular show. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.